Well, now, the upturn in the price of international oil benchmark Brent crude has pushed Nigeria's oil revenue above the estimate in the 2021 budget. Brent crude, against which the country's crude is also priced, has been traded more than about $20 higher than the federal government's benchmark for this year's budget. Now, in recent months, as at December the 31st, President Muhammadu Buhari signed the 2021 budget based on an oil price benchmark of $40 per barrel and a production level of 1.86 million barrels per day, with a projected revenue of 30%, amounting to about 2.01 trillion naira coming from oil-related sources, while 70% is to be earned from non-oil sources. Brent crude, which closed at about $51.22 per barrel in the month of December 2020, reached the high of $60 per barrel in February and rose almost as high as $70 before pairing some gains and then balancing now at about $62. It closed at $64.84 per barrel earlier on Thursday last week. And for Nigeria, which relies heavily on crude oil, this means that about 50% of government revenue and about 90% of export earnings will see some level of increase. Experts say the rise in oil price means increased revenue for the federal government, as this would also position the country to attract foreign portfolio investors into the country to grow the economy. Joining me now live via Skype to discuss this development and much more, I have public finance and policy analyst Olusegun Elemo. Good to have you on the show this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
The upturn in price of oil does not come to all of us as a surprise, as we've seen the gradual transition and then a bounce back looking at the global recovery. And then now we have the news of optimism around vaccine deployment. We having this cherry news, but it comes with cautious optimism, about $20 per barrel higher. Now, for a country that relies heavily on oil output and also the earnings we have from that, looking at the volume of about 50% of federal government's revenue, and for our foreign earnings as well, export earnings getting us about 90%. How well does this help us cushion the Nigerian economy, especially at a time where we're dealing with a very, very fragile state of the nation?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think you already contextualized the issue at hand. Oil accounts for more than 50% of government revenue and about 90% of foreign exchange earnings to the government. But it's good that we're having the price of crude now coming gradually back to the pre-pandemic level. Recall that during the pandemic in 2020, we had even the price of crude going as low as below $10 per barrel, and that didn't really go well for us as a country, and it was really a shaky moment for us. But now that we're having, as at yesterday, we had the Brent crude trading for as high as $63, and today the Bonny Light trading for as $62 per barrel. I think it's a good indication for us, but like you said, it's not anything to throw up our hands in the air about, to excite us, because there are other sectors of the economy that actually require attention, and I feel very strongly that we can use this moment again, in our history as a country, to then channel resources that we get from crude to develop other sectors of the economy, rather than throwing up monies on things that are really not important at this time.
But do you really share in the optimism concerns around the fact that we're not necessarily thinking straight when it comes to utilizing some of the extras that we have at this point in time? This is well above about $20 per barrel. And then we have infrastructure deficits and much more. The state of our refineries is in a pretty poor situation. We are not having manufacturing at optimal level. We are having our services also largely challenged. We have forex issues and a much more very tender situation when we are looking at the fact that we're just exiting recession. Do you think we have learned lessons and then can now prepare better by having these revenues come through, and that we have them go to the real sectors of the economy that will drive growth? Olusegun, did you hear me? Yes, I'll take my question
Hello, can you hear me?
again. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Do you think that the body language of the federal government at this time is prepared to look into the mistakes of the past, learn from them, and then we now have investment in infrastructure that will help propel growth with this extra income that is coming in above the budget estimate?
Yes, I don't think we have learned as much lessons as we should have. Just yesterday, the NNPC, signed the contract to rehabilitate the Port Harcourt refinery, and I had said in other forums that we do not need to rehabilitate that refinery. For instance, in 2018 and 2019, you realize that the refinery got almost 100 billion within 2018 and 2019, and could barely generate 1.5 billion for the country. And now 1.5 billion naira. And we spent almost 100 billion on direct cost and operational cost on that refinery alone. Now we want to spend $1.5 billion, $1.5 billion to rehabilitate that refinery, and much of that money, $800 million, is going to come from appropriation, $200 million from NNPC through NPDC, and then another $500 million coming from Afrexim Bank. I don't think that's a more efficient way to channel our resources, because there is the forecast now that we're going to get much from crude, but I think we need to focus on manufacturing, and then give attention to adding value to all of the products that we produce in Nigeria, so that they can be export worthy, and that is how we are going to be able to forex to stabilize the market. What is the contribution, for instance, of manufacturing to the GDP growth? Those are the things that we should be focusing on. If we're able to grow that, then we can stabilize the economy and move the economy away from being oil dependent to other sectors of the economy. And I think those are the things that we should be focusing on at this time, particularly when we're having more coming above the benchmark price for crude in the 2021 budget.
We have a blessing and a curse in our hand at this point in time, looking at the oil price rally. Now, at the end of the day, with the increased oil price, this also translates to increased cost of petroleum products. One of the biggest agenda for the federal government at this point in time is to look at cost-cutting measures. How do we also bring down the landing cost of petrol? The conversation around the pricing template has been back and forth. If we don't subsidize, then it means Nigerians are going to also buy their petrol for at about 250 naira per litre as well. With all of these conversations going on in the background, how much do you think the problem of the cost of petroleum products in country is a challenge for Nigeria, looking at subsidy and the removal for that, because the 2021 budget has no preparation for that? So where are we getting the funds from?
You see, I will answer that question, and the problem is there. But the issue we're having right now is that we give so much attention to subsidy. If we're going to subsidize, let's continue to subsidize, but I don't think everybody accepts that it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. And the point is that I don't think that we should even increase the price of crude, with additional naira, without passing the petroleum industry bill. I think we should give priority to that bill before we even talk about increasing the price of crude. And the price of crude ordinarily should be determined with what's happening in the international market. But in relation to subsidy, I think what we can do is that let's remove subsidy once and for all, and let's cease giving attention to this issue about whether we're subsidizing or when we're subsidizing or when we're removing subsidy, because when we give attention to that, then other market indices, we begin to fluctuate and we respond to that attention that we're giving to, removing subsidy. For instance, now, the speculation, you realize that there's so much speculation in the market. And marketers, for instance, now are standing on standby, looking at what will be the next move of government. And some are already speculating when government is going to remove subsidy and how they're going to halt products, and how they're going to put Nigerians in pain again, looking for petroleum products. And I don't think that is what we need right now. If we are going to remove subsidy, let's go ahead and remove the subsidy, and let's cease giving attention, unnecessary attention to subsidy. It is unsustainable, everybody understands it, but the less attention we give to it, the better it is for the market generally, and then the lighter fluctuation we're going to have with regards to other market indices that will respond in that regard.
It's quite difficult to silence this noise at this point in time, looking at the fact that we have all subsidy gulping at about 120 billion naira on a monthly basis, and then if we don't have the subsidy, the pinch on the average Nigerian is going to be quite intense and unbearable. Yes, we have deregulation coming little by little. Yes, the subsidy has to be removed, but are Nigerians well equipped enough to bear the brunt of this removal? Because if we still look at the inflationary pressures that are dealing hard with the average Nigerian's pocket, it's nothing to be compared to at this point in time. It's difficult. Do you understand that?
Yes. There is the assertion that whether the notion whether Nigerians can bear up with subsidy removal. But the other issue, the other side of the coin, is that can Nigeria continue to afford subsidy? I think those are the issues. Now, NNPC subsidizing petroleum product. At first it was calling it under recovery, and everybody was saying, yeah, you are subsidizing, and these things, these are extra budgetary spending because the subsidy was not captured in the budget. Now that the GMD has come to say that we're spending as much as 120 billion, subsidizing, petroleum product, is that budgeted for? Or it's captured in the operating expenses of NNPC. I think those are the issues that we need to look at. And who are the top party that are verifying this subsidy payment? Those are the issues. Now, on the issue of whether Nigerians can bear up with subsidy removal, I think we had this issue during the former President Goodluck Jonathan when the subsidy was partially removed. And some of the issues is that the subsidy removal was going to be channeled to other infrastructure gaps that we have, to closing those infrastructure gaps. And I think if we had done that at that time, we would have less burden on the part of Nigerians right now. The major issue we are going to be dealing right now is the infrastructure gap in terms of transportation, in terms of education, in health, and all of these things. If these gaps are still there, then there's no justification for continuing to remove subsidy. But if we are going to commit ourselves to closing the gaps in transportation, for instance, like we're doing, building railways and accelerating development in that regard, and then also the healthcare sector as well as the education sector, because right now you can see insecurity is affecting that sector, very strongly. So if we're going to give attention to that, then Nigerians can say, okay, yes, let's take away subsidy and let's put money in these other sectors. But where is the commitment? Where is the will to put the funds that will remove from subsidy into these other critical sectors?
Talking about commitment, the federal government's commitment to having an improved oil and gas sector now, you made mention of the fact that the passage of the PIB, that's the Petroleum Industry Bill, has taken far too long a time. This is one of the biggest, most transformational documents that would have to help propel Nigeria's oil and gas sector. The expectation was that within the first quarter of the year, the federal government would have intensified efforts to pass that. Latest by the end of this month, April. If we don't hear anything from the government, that means another cause for concern. Do you think we're seeing another delay on our hands?
You see, the stakeholders are numerous. And there are a lot of interest playing out in that sector. And I feel that what we need is the will on the part of the president to say that let's reform this sector once and for all. See, the point is that oil is not a renewable, it's not a renewable
energy
product.
Source.
It's going to, it's not a renewable energy source. It's not. It's going to get depleted, every now and then. And at some point, we will have less and less oil to trade with. Now, what do we fall back on? This is the time to remove the resource costs and let this sector operate optimally. And one of the ways it can operate optimally is to pass the Petroleum Industry Bill. Now, the point is, what has been holding this bill back? What has been holding it back? Why is it so difficult to get in, across, the borderline on as regards this bill? And I think all the stakeholders need to come together and say, we can't continue like this. We just have to reform this sector so that the average Nigerian, particularly those in extractive affected communities, can then begin to benefit, from this sector and from this resource, once and for all. And I think that it's high time we pass the bill, and we all attention now is focused on the National Assembly and whether this present assembly will have the will to move us ahead and get us, to the other side of the divide.
And beyond the passage of the PIB, we also have to look at concerns around gas as well, renewable energy. That's the conversation globally at this point in time. Now we have to look towards renewable energy and also increase our investment towards that drive as well. Now, with the increased funds that we expect to have from our earnings from oil this year, do you also think that government is, from the body language, is looking towards intensifying gas infrastructure and having gas become the engine, the power for the country? Yes, the Minister of State has already said, well, the year of gas, we're supposed to consolidate on that. We're going to have transition of vehicles from petrol-driven cars to gas-powered cars and a whole lot more. For some, talk is cheap, wouldn't you say?
Yes, of course, talk is cheap, but I think I've listened to the Minister of State for Petroleum, Chief Timi Persilva, and I think he's committed to exploring the gas option. I think he's committed, and he's really moving fast in that direction. But we haven't seen much, and we expect that things will move more rapidly in that regard. If we're going to explore the gas option, I think by now, even at some point he was saying that the convoy or the charade of Mr. President's vehicles, the one he rides in, will now begin to, it will be changed to a gas-powered vehicles, and that perhaps maybe other government top functionaries will then begin to ride gas-powered vehicles. I think we're waiting to see that, and we're waiting to also see at what scale are we going to have this gas energy, drive, some of the infrastructure and other, activities within government and outside government. I think, but I think that the Minister of State is committed to pushing that forward, but we're still waiting to see much in that regard.
What mistakes do you think we'll be making by not investing as much as possible into the nation's gas policy? Well,
I think that for the operators in the oil and gas industry, there's been this issue about gas flaring and other issues, but I think everybody is coming to terms now that if we're going to be exploring the gas option to power infrastructure, to power other government activities or off-government activities, and to then limit our dependence on oil, yes, we must reduce all of that and probably curb it completely if possible, and then drive on the government policy or in that regard. But I think that this present government and then with the work that the Minister of State is doing in that regard, I feel that he's going to, and of course he has knowledge of the industry, I feel he's going to be able to put some work into it. But like I said, it's something to say, and it's another thing to begin to get resolved. He said a lot of things, and we're still hoping that those results begin to come in.
And talking about results coming in now, with the outcome of this oil rally, do you also see our foreign reserves also now having an upward swing in terms of the pendulum movement? It's been back and forth. We've not necessarily had quite enough of reserves in terms of the earnings that we've had. We've just had a whole lot of dips so far. Do you think now that we are gradually hitting the $70 mark, we're going to have much more reserves that will cushion the economy properly?
Yes, certainly. If we're going to have, for instance, if the oil benchmark was put at $40 per barrel, and we're going to have as much excess as perhaps maybe at this point, maybe $23 per barrel, and then, the exchange rate was, for instance, benchmarked at $3.79 to $1. In that regard, we're still going to have some excess foreign exchange. So you expect that to then go into the foreign reserve and then help us to stabilize the pressure we're facing with the forex market. I think we're going to have some positive news come out in that regard, and this is actually what we've been waiting for, and I know that CBN also has been waiting for this moment. But we need not to get too much excited. We need to channel resources into other sectors that can help us stabilize the economy. The manufacturing sector is there, the real sector of the economy, everything. We need to put in resources there that can get us value. And then we have to also look at what we're producing locally and how we can add value to those products and make them export, export worthy, that can earn us even more forex and then expand the economy.
I like your reiteration of the fact that we need to aggressively invest in other sectors of the economy with our current oil proceeds, because when you look at certain shocks that come from the global market, we're not necessarily in any place to manage them or control them. If it's just like we just have to wait for the worst to happen and then prepare to deal with them. Look at the issue around the Suez Canal and the passage and transportation within that regard as well, and other things to come. The year is still quite early. You never can tell what new shocks, what new hits would have. So how important really is it for government to begin to understand that there are shocks that would come, whether now or later down the road, but we must prepare for those?
I think that's the major challenge we have with the public sector in Nigeria. It's changing very rapidly. And I think that's what we need.
We're just having a bit of network challenge there. We've been speaking with Olusegun Elemo, and the discussion has been around the oil price rally and what this translates to for the Nigerian economy, especially at a time when the fragility of the economy means a great deal of a challenge for the current administration. Olusegun Elemo, can you hear me clearly now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Now, I was saying that with the shocks we've had in the market, like, for example, this year, beyond the COVID-19 pandemic, we also had certain shocks, and the rally has been driven largely by vaccine deployment, but we also had issues around the Suez Canal and other developments that would still come up at the end of the day, whether now or later. How critical is it for government to have it at the back of their mind that there would always be shocks that will come and can always tilt the swing of the pendulum?
Yes, that's what I was saying, that nothing is constant, whether good or bad, whether increase in oil price or downfall in oil price, nothing is constant. Everything is changing, very rapidly. In 2020, for instance, we had oil price crash. Now in 2021, as early as March, we're having oil price now rising to almost $65 and closing to about $70 per barrel. So nothing is constant, and no one knows what is going to happen.
We're speaking about the oil and gas sector in Nigeria and how to ensure that we put our best foot forward. And irrespective of all of the shocks, Nigeria just has to be prepared.